Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rookie Mistakes to Avoid as a New Adjuster. My name is Nicole Neese, the Director of Marketing of Simsol Software. In this exclusive webinar, we have a panelist of the best experts in the flood insurance industry that are going to be answering a new adjuster's questions. If you're a seasoned adjuster, you know there are mistakes you could have avoided if you just knew something sooner. Our new adjuster is Patrick McAuliffe, and moderating today is Danny Sutliff. Our special guests are Clint Miller. He is the Vice President of Flood Claims Operations for Fountain Group. We have Gregg. He's a claims examiner for Bankers Insurance. Gerry, he is the Flood Director of Bankers Insurance. And then we have Noha. He is a Senior Independent Adjuster with over 38 years of experience. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Go ahead and turn it over to Danny and Patrick. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I would like to personally thank all our panelists for participating in today's webinar. Each panelist brings a plethora of amount of experience to the table in which I'm confident that everybody who's attending today will benefit. What we're going to be doing is asking a bunch of questions, and I'm going to target a certain question to a certain panelist, and then each of our panelists will then chime in. So let's get started. As Nicole stated, we will answer all your questions at the end of this webinar. So Patrick, take it away.
All right. So as was stated earlier, I'm a new adjuster. So we've worked together with some of the other new adjusters to try and create a list of questions that I'm going to go through. And hopefully our panelists can give us some pretty good answers to those. So question one's pretty straightforward. It's probably what most people are concerned with, and it's about how to get paid. So how does a new adjuster make contact with IA firms in order to get claims from a carrier? So one of the big questions for new adjusters when you're first starting out and you don't know a lot of people in the industry is, how do I get in contact with these carriers? What are they looking for? What is the best way to get, in business with them and start handling claims?
All right, I'm going to give that question to our seasonal adjuster, Mr. Joe Noha.
Hey, Danny, thank you. The first thing is always have a good resume prepared before you start trying to contact any of the IA companies. Maybe another thing you can do is contact a lot of the adjusters, or one adjuster can recommend another that you can talk to and find out, get a feel for what adjusting company that best may suit your needs.
Okay. How about Gerry? What would you chime in on that one?
Best way to do it is, again, go on Facebook or any other social media, and that will probably give you direction of where to go and who to talk to and that kind of stuff. And again, I don't know whether you're in the industry or not, but if you are in industry, you can make contacts, and a lot of the the IA firms are listed in a lot of different social media. Go ahead and start looking there, possibly, contact one of those.
Okay.
Hey, Danny?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to help Gerry out a little bit on that one. I do agree with him that Facebook, Kevin Miller designed that Facebook page that's for flood adjusters only. He has a lot of information that the adjusters can get out of there. He tells you where the seminars are, who's having the seminars. It helps you out with who's hiring, where there's floods at. I mean, he has a lot of information on there, and the adjusters also put in their 2 cents, which helps a lot because it keeps everybody in the loop of what's going on around the country.
I'll try to get that email address from you and post that. Nicole will post that out for everybody who's attending.
It's a Facebook page, Danny.
Oh, very good.
It's what it is. It's a Facebook page. It's for flood adjusters only.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, let's go to our second question, Patrick.
Excellent. All right, so moving on to question number 2. It's going to be what items and damages do new adjusters often overlook when first working a claim? So one of the things I hear a lot from adjusters who are more experienced is that new adjusters leave a lot of money lying on the table, that their estimates should be larger, could be larger, but they're forgetting certain items. They're not thinking things all the way through. So I was wondering if there are any items that you normally see new adjusters miss, or things that new adjusters should know about writing their estimate that might help them out, that they usually overlook or don't know to think about.
Excellent. I'm going to try to target that question to our examiner, Joe Gregg.
Thanks, Danny. You know, a lot of adjusters, you know, that are new do miss things. I mean, some of adjusters like myself that have 20 years miss things from time to time. But the best thing I can tell the new adjusters is don't get in a big hurry. You know, take your time, and I think if they develop a routine or a system, they should follow that at all times. And I think Clint Miller will agree with me on that one. He sees a lot. He sees everything that comes through the Fountain Group, but adjusters should take their time. I mean, a new adjuster shouldn't do basically what I did when I first started, and I'll admit it, I got in a big hurry and I used to miss things. I used to miss a lot of stuff. But now that I'm in this position here working with Gerry, I see adjusters miss from small items to big items. I mean, Gerry and I have sat here before and wonder, how do you miss half of a house? It just varies, but taking your time and developing a routine is probably the best thing that we could tell them. You know, only work 3 claims, maybe 4 claims a day if you're new. Don't try to do 10 or 12. And that's basically what I think it should be done.
So Joe, can you chime in that as well? Joe Noha?
No, what Joe said is true. The longer that you do this and get into a routine and do it the same way every time, and take good photographs, you're just going to get proficient as you go along.
Okay. Let's move on to question number 4. Patrick?
Or 3, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3.
All right. So what are some possible? Now I'm following your lead. What are some possibilities, unforeseen difficulties that a new adjuster might face when working in a CAT area for the first time? So one of the things, again, that I've heard is that when you show up to a CAT area, you think you're ready, but you're not. You show up to an area that's been hit by a hurricane, and there's a lot of stuff that you never really think about until you're there, boots on the ground. And I was just hoping to alleviate as much of that difficulty as possible.
Excellent. What we're going to do is we're going to give that question to Joe Noha, and I would like to have Joe Gregg also chime in on that because he's also the examiner. Go ahead, Joe.
Always contact the insured, and the insured can give you a lot of useful information about road closures, areas that you can't get into. They can help you a lot if just explain the situation to them. It doesn't matter if you're using Siri to navigate you someplace. If you can't get past a bridge or through a street that's down, still flooded, it won't do any good. You have to just be prepared with, bad conditions during a hurricane, debris and things on the road or in a way that where you can't get to a house that you think you may be able to.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I was hearing about that a lot of people don't realize. They're so used to using GPS in their phones, things like that. And then they get in the CAT situation and there's nowhere to charge your phone. There's power lines are down, cell signals are down, and street signs are blown over. So it's very difficult to operate in an area like that. And anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I would like to say something. Something that the new adjusters need to be aware of is the location where these losses are at. Some areas of this country are rough. They really are. I mean, we had Danny, myself, and a few other people knew an adjuster that got in trouble in Chicago, in South Chicago. He did not know the area. He's from California. He didn't know the area. He got in a situation where he came up to the neighborhood, but he wasn't aware of his surroundings, and he was surrounded by people, and he was afraid, and he backed out, and he just ran. I mean, you have to know your surroundings. You try to get a feel of where you're going, because an adjuster can get in trouble in a bad area. You really can.
Yeah.
So security is important. Is security important around that at that time?
Sometimes you have to go in with a police escort. That happened to me once in Detroit, Michigan. And myself and another adjuster, one time we were in South Chicago and there was a shootout in the street. And we had nowhere to go but run into people's homes. And it does get bad out there. You just have to know your situation. You have to know your surroundings.
What about gas cans, for the car and all that? Should you account for that when you're going out to these areas?
Go ahead, Clint.
It's always good to have extra gas when you're, 100 miles away from a working gas station. But you have to think about the supplies, and as Joe said, your surroundings. It means in the place that you're working at, make sure that you're prepared for the worst, because it will happen.
Okay, we have Clint back on. You want to read the next question, Patrick?
Yeah, certainly. All right, so question number 4, what information or tasks should a new adjuster have ready to provide an insured when they first make contact? So one of the things I hear from adjusters is that when you're first contacting the insured, there's certain things that you want to tell them, certain things you don't want to tell them, certain things that you're going to want prepared, things printed out, ready to hand out, things like that, or tasks you can provide them to get the ball rolling that a new adjuster wouldn't think to say or to not say. So just wanted to see if you guys had any information on that.
Okay, so I'm going to get that question to Gerry for the carrier's perspective, and I'd also like to have Clint follow it up with the independent adjuster firm. So take it away, Gerry.
So first of all, when you get your assignment, communication, that's what you need with these policy holders. Call them up, make arrangements to see them, tell them who you are, who you work for, and even mention the Write Your Own company that their policy holder has a policy with. Because we know a lot of policy holders don't read their policies. But anyway, again, when you show up at the site the first time and you meet the insured for the first time, make sure you have proper identification. Show, your FCN card, if you have one at that point in time, and a business card, any kind of identification to justify who you are and why you're there. And again, FEMA's requiring you to, hand certain materials to the policy holder, such as the claims handbook, which explains the claims process, or the ICC pamphlet, if it's a larger type of loss where ICC may become part of the claim. And again, like I say, communicate. We had a claim back in Katrina where the insured called up and it came into our office at that time. And the girl that took the claim sat there for about 10 minutes listening to the policyholder vent. After he vented, he calmed down. We were able to justify going back out there and correcting his problems. Again, communication, that's the key to this whole thing. Go ahead.
Can you follow that up a little bit more, Clint, on that topic?
Yeah, sure. I think when the adjuster, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. When the adjuster makes first contact, it's a good time to start letting the insured know what they can and can't do as far as starting to make repairs, gathering information that you might need when you get there. They can start separating damaged from undamaged items. They can start preparing a contents loss list, in which you can assist them with further once you get there. They can start, writing serial numbers down for appliances and AC units. They can talk to them about mitigation, what they can and can't do as far as drying out, clean up, mold, stuff like that. Just kind of preparing the insured for additional steps once you get out there and what they can do to start repairing the home.
Excellent.
Okay, Patrick, can you give us our next question, please?
Certainly can. All right, so question number 5 is, what tools or equipment are essential for a new adjuster to purchase before going out in the field? You hear a lot of different things from different people. Danny, you mentioned a gas can earlier, things like that. Things that when you go out in the field, you're going to say, man, I wish I had brought X, Y, Z. But you don't think to do it until you get out there, but a new adjuster would have thought to bring this, to include this, and make sure they had it.
Well, with that, I'm going to give that question to our expert adjuster, Joe Noha.
You can never have enough tools or equipment with you, but I would tell you that if you have one camera, you better have 2 more for backups, along with backup batteries, measuring tapes. Don't just buy one, have 3 or 4 in your car. Have extra batteries for a laser measuring device. All these things seemingly go bad only when you really need them out in the field.
Yeah.
So, always have boots and other things. You never know what, if you got 2 feet of water and you're standing in a foot of it, you don't want to be wet all day. So, think about the worst conditions that you can run into and, have those in your vehicle when you're in the field.
So do you recommend possibly using your cell phone as a camera?
Sure. I've done that a few times where, I was 200 feet away from the vehicle and my camera went bad for some reason or wasn't taking the shots I needed. Just reach and get the cell phone and take some pictures and load them into the program.
Oh, that's excellent. Maybe possibly an iPad as well might be good as well.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else would like to chime in on that one?
Yeah, Danny, I'd like to jump in. This is Clint. Concerning the cell phones, we have a lot of adjusters that are using cell phones to take their photos these days. What they do is they use the phone to take the photos, and the photos automatically go into the cloud. Everybody knows what the cloud is now, whether it be a Dropbox site or something of that nature. That way they know their photos are saved, as opposed to using a physical, just a regular camera that you could drop and break and your photos might be lost. So that's something to consider as well.
So you're talking about Murphy's Law raises its angrily head. Per se.
Absolutely. It's bound to happen for sure.
Yeah, I've personally spoke with a number of adjusters who said not just that the device gets broken, that a lot of times they'll bring devices out into the field. And to go back to what Gerry said earlier, like sometimes the areas you're going to, you got people looting, things like that, because it's a disaster area and those devices can get stolen out of your car. So I've talked to adjusters who mentioned that they had cameras, they took all these photos on them, and then that device got stolen from them. And all of that work that they did is gone. So yeah, having it backed up on a cloud, not just for the device getting damaged, but for any other unforeseen circumstances as well would be excellent.
And don't leave your laptop or your camera in your vehicle overnight.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I guess we've all done that before, I guess.
Right.
Okay, Patrick, can we get the next question, please?
Absolutely. All right, so next one's going to be, what mistakes do insureds often make that an experienced adjuster can prevent? What do you see an insured do that they think is a good idea or they think might help that suddenly you say, no, don't do this. You're supposed to be doing X instead of Z or vice versa?
I'm going to give that question to Clint. I bet he runs into that all the time.
Oh yeah, we see a lot of adversity with insureds. They want to do it their own way before speaking with the adjuster or calling our office to get the actual correct process for completing the claim. Stuff like removing damaged materials or contents from the site prior to our inspection the adjuster should explain on their initial phone call that all items must be left on site for inspection. The adjuster needs to take a picture of it and have documentation of it. He's going to include it in his report. This is a really big issue on contents losses. It can happen on the building, but mainly on contents that you show up and the insured says, well, I just went in and threw everything away, or the church crew came in and demoed and they threw everything out. And it doesn't really matter. We're still going to need the photo documentation of those items before we can allow them in our estimate.
Yeah, the insurance company's probably not going to pay you for something you claim you have, but don't have any documentation of that's already thrown away.
Yeah, that $10,000 leather Italian couch is going to be difficult to prove if we didn't see it.
Yeah.
Something else is the insureds will go out and hire mitigation companies and just assume that everything is covered, that they're going to do all the cleanup, all the drying. But as we all know, there are guidelines for that per FEMA. So the adjuster should also discuss those guidelines when they make the initial contact with the insured.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
So what I was going to say is, based upon that, also, what happens if you walk into, you said the remediation company has done the remediation or started, and you walk into just pure concrete on the areas that we're carpeting? What would you recommend to the new adjuster to say to the insured, well, to address that issue?
So the adjuster gets there and the carpeting has been removed? And it's
That's
just bare
correct.
concrete?
That's correct.
As far as mitigation goes?
Well, basically to replace the carpeting and what is it, how good a quality it is. We don't have any proof.
At that point, it's going to be very difficult to prove. You can ask the insured if they have any photos that they took prior to the demolition. If they didn't take any, right after the flood, you can ask them if they've got photos prior to the flood from a birthday party or a holiday celebration that might show, at least somewhat of the type of carpet that was down before. Other than that, if they've already moved, it's going to be pretty difficult.
So would it be
Can I chime in on that for a second,
Sure.
Danny?
You betcha.
Again, in your first communication, when you're talking to this policyholder, if he's tearing stuff out, ask him to save a piece of the carpet. So they can cut a 12 by 12 inch piece of the carpet and the padding, and it's right there. They can, at that point in time, they can throw the rest of it out.
For each room, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So they would be able to toss it if they had a sample or something that you could prove that this was the carpet before they tossed it.
Correct.
That's correct.
All right, cool.
Is there any other items that you want to talk about dealing with the subject?
Yeah, I've got a couple other things. Mainly just on that initial contact call, making sure the insured understands the entire process. Just going through it with them and making them feel comfortable with you. I think Joe Gregg mentioned earlier, gaining the trust of the insured. A lot of adjusters just kind of get robotic and go through the process, and the insured doesn't understand really what's going on. They've never had a claim before. So just making sure they have an overall awareness of the process. A lot of insureds always assume that a flood policy operates just like a homeowner's policy, and we all know that's not the case. So make sure they understand it's a federal policy. Actually, it's federal law, and there are some restrictions that wouldn't be as with a regular homeowner's policy.
Okay. With that, let's go to the next question, Patrick.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and move on over. All right, so question number 7 is going to be, what are some best practices when handling a total loss? So one of the things that, again, I've heard is that handling a total loss for the first time is somewhat daunting because you show up and it's basically just a slab with nothing on it. And that it can be very, very daunting because, what is there to take pictures of? What do you do? There's nothing there, so just advice on how to handle a situation like that, what to do, what best practice is.
Okay, that's a really good question. I think that we need probably everybody to chime in on that one, but I'm going to start off with Joe Noha because he just pops up there and sees a slab. So what are you going to do, Joe?
Well, there's photo evidence of what the house was like prior to the loss. There's different sites that you can go on to with satellite imagery that we have today. And we have planes that fly over pre-storm. There's all different ways of seeing what the risk looked like before. There's many houses just wiped off the face of the earth, and all you have is just where the foundation was. You can measure, where the foundation was and get a start from there. But in this day and time, we have so much available to us to where we can see from old tax records, maybe it's just a year, past. There's different ways of getting evidence of what the house was like before the loss.
Excellent.
That's what I was going to ask you, Gerry. What are you going to need to take? What's the first thing you're going to fill out when you get a total loss?
Okay. Again, if you're talking about a slab on grade house, if the house is gone, you can go onto the slab and you can see where the rooms were, because it's all those rooms and those studs are all embedded basically into the slab itself. You can see if there's tile in the bathrooms, what kind of tile it was. Again, the slab can give you a good portion of what was there prior to the storm.
Okay.
And so you're going to get your measurements off the floor joists or the floorboards.
That's correct.
That slab itself can give you some clues.
Here's a good question for you all. This one's going to Clint and going to Gerry Waytowich. What needs to be done as soon as you see that slab on grade? What needs to be done? I mean, as far as
it seems like you're hinting at a certain form that should be signed by the insured.
Well, that's just one thing, yes. But the other is, do we need to contact our IA firm? Would that be a possibility?
I'd like to get in on that one, Danny.
Yeah.
Okay, when you arrive on Port St. Joe, let's go to Port St. Joe. It was the most recent disaster we've had. You get there, you have a slab. I would recommend that you look at the area and start taking pictures of a circumference of that slab so that you can see how the palm trees or trees are leaning. You need to establish a general and temporary condition of flooding. If it's a storm surge, well, the storm surge is going to push the trees in a certain direction. You're going to be able to follow that. You're going to see where the water came from. Okay, all of the trees are going to be leaning like this. If you'll be able to find debris of that house somewhere in that neighborhood, because not all houses get flattened. And that was proven in Port St. Joe. We knew where the water came from and how it moved. We were pretty fortunate on that. Now, what you were asking about a total house, FEMA really doesn't total a house. We pay policy limits. And that's pretty much what we do. I said, for 20 years, I was always told we don't total homes out. We pay policy limits.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's important to explain to the insured that this is not a valued policy, that you might not get policy limits. I mean, it's possible that they could be overinsured. Yeah, I mean, they might have $250,000 worth of coverage, but the house might only be worth $180,000. So, what are we going to pay in that case? Something else that is very important on a total loss claim structurally, I think, is to get an engineer out there. Danny, you were alluding to calling the IA firm pretty quickly. That's probably a good idea for the adjuster to contact their manager and say, hey, this house is completely gone. Should we request an engineer? Manager's probably going to say, yes, let's get that request in right away so we can get the engineer out there to assess the damage, whether or not it was wind versus flood and stuff like that.
So go ahead, Joe, sorry.
Something also that needs to be explained to the insured is that just because you had a storm surge of 15 or 18 feet doesn't mean that you had 15 or 18 feet around your house. Let's say, for example, your home was sitting 10 foot above the sea level and you had a 16-foot surge. You're only going to have 6, maybe 7 feet of water underneath that house. You're not going to have 15 or 16 feet because the datum of that house is at 10 feet. The datum of the sea level is at 0.0. The water is going to rise 15 feet off of the sea level. It's not going to rise 15 feet off of 10 foot above sea level.
Okay. So, Clint, if I was working for you or Patrick was working for you and he came up across the slab, as soon as he gets done with his inspection, do you recommend him calling you and informing you of what the situation is right away?
We don't necessarily require them to give us a phone call. it might be a good idea if they have the opportunity to go into our management system and make some diary notes, showed up on inspection, house was completely gone, went over everything with the insured. We don't require that they call us right away unless there's it's case by case. If some kind of odd situation, the insured is panicking or very upset and wants an answer on something right away, of course, they can call us anytime if there's an elevated situation like that.
Oh, very good.
Excellent.
Is there any other any other answers to this question that you want to bring out? Anybody?
Yeah, first thing I would do is definitely try and figure out what the replacement cost of that structure is. Because that's going to give you policy limit issues or whatever, documentation proving policy limits. Like I said, if you had a $300,000 home, you had $250,000 in policy limits, you get your paid your $250,000. But again, establish the replacement cost of that structure. It's very important.
Excellent. Okay, Patrick, let's go to the next question, please.
All right, excellent. Okay, so question number 8 is going to be, what are some variations to the standard policy that a new adjuster might not be familiar with, such as an RCBAP or seeing an RL in front of the policy number?
I'm going to leave that to Gerry Waytowich.
Thank you. Again, you're a new adjuster out there in the field. You probably, if you're in the mentee program, you're going to take direction from your mentor. He's going to walk you through the claims and what you need to do. Again, under the flood program, you get authorization for a certain level of experience. The RCBAP and again, the RL, which is a repetitive loss situation, are difficult to handle, and you need the experience to do that. Again, reach out to your mentor on it and discuss any issues you may have with that. But again, stay within the realm that you're authorized for. If you have dwellings, stick with your dwellings. Don't go to your GPs or especially the RCBAPs.
Okay.
What if you, I have a question for you, Gerry. So what if you're the adjuster and your FNOL says that this is kind of like a condo unit and you have building coverage and contents coverage, and so there is an RCBAP, but you're not handling that. You're just handling the building and the contents for the insured. What would you do in that scenario?
In that sense, I would find out who the adjuster is that's handling the RCBAP, meet with him and discuss the situation, because the RCBAP covers everything in the building. And again, the contents and stuff, you still, under the dwelling policy, belong to the policyholder. So handle it, but definitely make contact with the RCBAP adjuster.
Doesn't the dwelling become an excess if it needs?
Yeah, so what I'm gathering is try and avoid these if you're a new adjuster.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What do you think,
always
Clint?
remember that. Go ahead, Clint.
I think I was just going to add, kind of a different issue with new adjusters. Obviously, learning the policy front to back is the best way that's going to help you out there in the field. But basements and post-form elevated buildings always give, veteran adjusters trouble sometimes. So that's something, if you've never handled, can give you a lot of trouble out there in the field when you're handling one of those claims. So somebody had mentioned getting with your mentor or getting with your IA firm manager if you come across a basement or post-form elevated on one of the first few claims you ever handle, just to make sure you get those coverage limitations correct.
Excellent.
Let's go to the next question, Patrick.
All right, can do. So next one, question number 9, is going to be how to define a true general condition of flooding, and give some examples. Like what means a general condition of flooding when you see that on a policy?
I'm going to leave that to the examiner because he gets that all the time. Go ahead, Mr. Gregg.
Oh, well, the policy has its own definition, but there's so many ways to that you're going to have a general temporary condition of flooding. It could be man-made, actually. Here's a good example from man-made. Let's say a car hits a fire hydrant. Fire hydrant spews a lot of water, and it floods 1 or 2 homes. Now you have 3 properties. You got the street and 2 addresses. So, but the thing on that one is the NFIP now wants subrogation. That would be a subrogation claim that would also come about. besides the general and temporary condition of flooding on that situation. Then you have river overflow, you have tidal surge, you have lake overflow. Here's a good example, Round Lake in Chicago, Illinois. It's not a closed basin lake, it has a spillway, but they can't control that sometimes, and it overflows and it floods all of the homes right around it.
Two or more acres.
Yeah, 2 or more acres. I mean, it just, you follow the definition of the policy, and then you'll see other general and temporary condition of flooding situations out there. I mean, it's not just limited to what we know in the policy. There's a lot of different situations that can occur.
Okay, anybody else would like to chime in on that? That's always been a great little topic.
I know that,
go ahead.
what was that?
Now, go ahead, Clint.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on certain claims, whether it's low water or minimal water inside the house, and you're having trouble, might be getting off topic here, but establishing that GCF is so important, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. We've had this come up a lot more lately. It seems like that companies and FEMA are getting a lot more adamant about actually proving that GCF. Even when you close without payment, they want to make sure that there wasn't GCF that we may have missed. So, interviewing neighbors, getting with the local fire department, looking at weather reports online and different resources like that to determine what the flood characteristics were in the area, how much rain was there, to make sure you've covered all your bases is very important on these low water plains.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was concerned about is how do you even establish the general condition of flooding? How do you prove it? What are you looking for? What does an experienced adjuster, when he looks at like a house, say, oh, I definitely know that this happened. I can prove it to my company because I can see this or that, or.
And first and foremost, the easiest way is to look for water lines on the outside and the inside of the building. Once you establish that there's water lines on your insured property, look at the neighbor's house. Are there water lines on that house as well? If you see water lines on both houses, then you've established a GCF if that's 2 properties. The physical observations are the first key that you look for. And if you can't find those, then you might need to go to the other avenues that I mentioned earlier.
Excellent.
That sounds like some great information. I was also going to think about sewage backup. What do we need to have that to make it a GCF? Anybody want to take that one?
Well, if you got sewage backup, it's going to be inside the risk.
That's
as long as there's, proven GCF in the area, then you have coverage.
Okay. All right. So that would be one case of making a good GCF, a general condition of flooding within the area then. Right. Okay. Anybody else would like to chime in? All right, Patrick, let's go and do our next question, please.
All right, moving on to question number 10. We're going to have, what are the best ways to handle a personal property claim? Just generally, what is your best practice? Is there something that you have done in the past or you've seen done in the past that you think is a good way to handle?
I'm going to have Clint take that question.
To start, I want to say the worst way to handle a personal property claim is to just hand an insured a property contents loss sheet to say, fill this out and get it back to me and we'll close your contents claim. That is not actually handling the contents loss. We want to assist the insured with their contents loss and make sure they understand what information is needed. We want to make sure they understand that we have to see a physical change in the items before we can pay for them. Just because something got wet doesn't mean we can pay for it. There's Excel spreadsheets out there that you can send an insured. They can fill their list out on an Excel spreadsheet, send it right back to you. It makes it very easy for the adjuster, but it's very easy to miss things or overlook things that shouldn't be in that list if you're just taking a list from the insured and just copying it into your estimating program. So make sure you communicate with the insured about what you can and can't pay for, what documentation that you need, so they understand that and can get that information to you. There must be direct physical damage, as I mentioned. Explain replacement costs, explain depreciation, so they understand why they're not getting the $50,000, they're only getting $30,000. Photos. That something goes back to the initial phone call. Make sure they understand that you must have a photo of it before you can put it on your estimate. They cannot be enough photos. So if they've got 500 photos, you send you all 500 photos. We can take those, we can sift through them and maybe not include all 500, but 500 should be enough to document pretty much any residential contents loss explain any high dollar items, might need price verification. If you've got a $10,000 Italian leather couch, then we need to prove that it's actually a $10,000 leather couch. They can give you a copy of a receipt, or you can find a comparable price item online and use that online printout to document the price of that item.
Excellent.
Okay, that's pretty good. Let's go to our next question, please, Patrick.
All right. Question number 11 is going to be, what is the best way to handle when an insured doesn't want to sign the proof of loss?
Oh, I'm going to give this one to Gerry and Joe. And they're together, so there you go.
Yeah, okay. Again, you've done your inspection of the property. You've been back to the hotel. You've written up your scope of damages. You feel comfortable that that recommendation is going to fly. You go back to the policyholder, and he does not want to sign a proof of loss because he does not understand, number one, what a proof of loss is all about. Basically, it's his take of what he is owed for the damages to his property. Now, if he does not want to sign it because he's uncomfortable with it, then fine. You tell him you're going to make your recommendation to the company, and if they have any further issues, because you're going to give him a copy of your estimate and recommendation, and if he has any further, he may want to call a contractor to come out there and verify that what you have written is what it will take to fix the house. Again, he made a lot of other couple reasons such as that. But again, if he does that and he doesn't want to sign the proof, leave your information with him. Tell him possibly even he can contact the carrier directly, and he can talk to the examiners that we have here and get it signed. If we have run into a issue where he totally does not want to sign the proof of loss, what we do is basically we will take your recommendation and issue a payment to the policyholder as a undisputed amount, and also tell him at the time that we do that if he has further items or things that have been missed, provide us with the information and we will gladly go ahead and look at it, and if it's a legitimate deal, we will definitely issue supplemental payments on it.
One of the biggest things that we run into here, I don't know if Clint does, well, some of the stuff I do know about what Clint does, but public adjusters. Public adjusters have a tendency to promise a lot of things that we just can't pay for. And that ties up these claims quite a bit. And I think Clint will agree with us that, you know, sometimes trying to reason with these public adjusters just doesn't work. And so what we do is just like Gerry says, we'll pay the undisputed, and
we'll end up from there.
Yeah, and then we just go from there. I mean, but we can't leave the insured just out there hanging with no money to repair his home. That's something we just don't want to do, and we don't want to be accused of doing that. So what, you know, I think the fairest thing that we can do is pay the undisputed, and then we'll just work it out with the public adjuster if we can.
So do we try to get, well, I know we're trying to get the signed proof of loss, but if they don't sign it, are you going to make the payment for the undisputed amount?
We are.
And we'll document it. We will document it, and again, we will send the notice out to the policyholder, giving him further instruction if he wants to get more money or send us another proof of loss with his demand on it, and we'll take a look at that. You know, but again, FEMA wants us to get the money out to these policyholders, and we agree on your estimate, your recommendation. We agree with that. We owe that to the policyholder, whether it's enough or not enough or what have you. We owe that money to the policyholder, and we need to get it into his hands. And if he disagrees with it, he can come back at us and produce documentation showing what we have missed.
You know, and another thing, we don't want to hold the adjuster back either. I mean, the adjuster has bills to pay. The adjuster needs to buy food for his family. We just can't hold all of this money because we got a public adjuster that doesn't agree with what we're doing.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Okay, Patrick, our last question, and then we're going to open the questions up to all the attendees.
All right, excellent.
Question number 12.
Question number 12 is, what are some examples of how to pay for decks? What I've heard is that the decks are somewhat difficult to cover, that it's one of the most obnoxious things to work with when trying to determine what is covered, what isn't covered. Something about stairs and landings and elevations. It can get very confusing. So I just wanted to see if we could get a formalized answer on how that's handled.
Well, I think Joe Noha would probably be able to answer that. Joe, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. So
In well, if it's 1989 Hurricane Hugo, we paid decks on RCBAPs until we were blue in the face. But no, today's environment with FEMA and National Flood Insurance Program, we're not covering decks. We're covering the landings for a stairwell. If it's, you know, encroaching for the encroachment of the risk, but you're limited to 16 square feet, 4 feet by 4 feet. So as far as outward paying for decks, no. We're paying for deck type landings, you know, maybe connected to a stairwell.
is that for every egress?
To get in inside the house, like just the same way as we pay for one stairwell entrance for that level. If that stairwell had a landing, if it was 20 by 20 foot, we could only pay 16 square feet.
Is
Yeah,
that
so
per egress?
Well, for the stairwell, which is,
For each stairwell?
no, one stairwell.
So it's one stairwell
next
leading
question
to
on that.
a 4x4 landing at the level of the house.
Well, up to 16 square feet, correct.
Jerry, you had something to say on that?
Yes, we will pay the egress to that property. If he has a door on 4 sides of that building and stairs going up to those things, we'll pay for all 4 sections. At
But only to
16
doors
square
on the
feet.
outside of the building. So like you'd build a stairwell to each door.
Right.
Okay, so if you had multiple
Each
doors,
unit.
you'd get a stairway to each door. Would each get their own 4x4 platform?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else dealing with landings, stairs, anything to do with the 16 square foot rule, anything to do with decks?
If you don't want to pay for a deck, contact your IA manager.
Yeah.
There you go.
Don't guess.
Pictures
Yeah,
help.
it's one of the ones that I had heard was notoriously difficult to deal with. That, you know, you have like a raised home with 3 doors on the outside, 2 on the first floor, 1 on the second floor. They used to have a deck. Now there's no deck. I heard it was one of those questions you want to ask early on.
With pictures, right? If you can get it.
Yeah. All right. That was it. So you wanted to open up the questions, Danny?
Yes, I wanted to open up any questions that you might have for our fine panelists because with this, it's your time, and any questions you need answered dealing with the flood program, you've got many years of experience here. I've got one question, guys. This is from David Franks. If you don't reach the insured by phone, send a text to, I think this is a statement, 2016, Baton Rouge cell service was down, but text messages went through. So I
the
think
way to reach out to the insured. He's saying that back in 2016 in Baton Rouge, cell service was down, but he was still able to send text. So it's a good way to get first contact with the insured if you're in like a CAT situation.
Right, I think that's what he was trying to
Excellent
convey.
advice, David.
Okay, I got a second question. This is from R. Johns. What is a GCF? Did we not explain what that was?
Yeah, I think we started using the abbreviation, but we didn't really cover exactly what we were talking about.
Okay, so who would like to handle that one?
What's a general condition of flooding?
There you go.
Basically has to be, you know, normally dry land that is inundated by water. It doesn't mean how much water. It could be an inch of water or 2 feet. But, you know, it has to encompass either 2 acres or more, or two properties. Could be a straight and the insured's residence, which will also qualify for a GCF.
What is the most recent acceptable repair method for brick veneer over wood sheathing that has been submerged? Anybody want to take that one?
Request an engineer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and repeat that back just so we can hear it again. What is the most recent acceptable repair method for brick veneer over wood sheathing that has been submerged? Now, yeah, obviously your go-to move is call an engineer.
Yeah, if it's over wood sheeting and not blackboard, that's a different scenario. You're stuck probably taking that veneer off. There's no way to get the ties off and make the repairs. You can't chip that plywood off from the inside. It's just not going to happen.
I'd like to step in on that one.
FEMA has guidelines for that.
You know, FEMA does have guidelines for that, but also, like Clint was saying, call an engineer. There's a lot of plywood out there that's behind that brick that can tolerate water. It just depends on how long and how deep that water was in the house.
Right.
And what the sheathing was made of, I think, would be an important thing too.
Again, FEMA has guidelines on that, so go to the claims manual and it's all identified in there.
Okay. Got another question for y'all. Okay. From Mr. Mike Smith. Mike saying, when flooding the insured's premises does not meet the definition of a GCF, however, there is a GCF in the area. I think he's bringing that up with the backup, the surge backup.
Sewer backup?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, on that, in the policy does allow to pay for the sewer backup if there's a general condition of flooding in the area but did not touch the structure. Again, what you have to identify out there is what is the general condition of flooding and where it happened. My experience is basically you'll have a pump station down the road somewhere, maybe a mile away from there, that got flooded and it caused that pump to go out. Now up the road a little bit, now your sewer lines are backed up. As long as you make confirm that general condition of flooding of that event back down there, there's coverage for that basement with that stuff in it.
Yeah, basements are the ones that homes with basements is where you're going to see that biggest problem. You got areas, well, in the Midwest primarily, you got Ohio, you got Indiana, you have Illinois. They have a lot of basements, homes that are close to rivers, where back when they were built in the 50s and 60s, the contractors were allowed to put one big pipe out and run it right into the river. So that water will back up into basements. And there may not be a general temporary condition of flooding around the house, but that river is flooding, so the house is covered.
Oh, good point. I got another question for Mr. Smith, and I'll read this out, but I'm not really quite understanding. I think I got the gist of it. It says also touch base on the instructions to pH on countertops and cabinetry on first contact. I think he wants to know the rules on when you have to replace the cabinetry or remove and reinstall, I'm believing.
I think the manual this year has pretty much explained that pretty well. You still have the issue with the countertop. There's no question about that. Some companies glue it. Some companies will put the, silicone. If it's got silicone on it, you can cut it off and put that resin or whatever they use to dissolve the glue that connects the two butts right there by the sink. That can come off. But if it's glued to the cabinet, it's going to break. There's no question it's going to break.
Okay, that's really good information.
Just to add another point, I think something good to tell the policyholder on the initial contact is to make sure they have someone that's qualified to work on countertops to be the one to try to remove those without damage.
Exactly.
Just have a church group or just a group of regular laborers try to come in, they're just going to start swinging a sledgehammer and breaking everything in the house. That would not be covered. But if they had a professional contractor that's certified to work on those types of countertops, try to remove it, and he did break it, and he can give us a statement about it, then those countertops would be covered. But just going over that with the insured on the first phone call is best practice.
And that's what I mean by PH is the policyholder.
Policyholder, yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Mr. Mike Carley. FEMA guidance to have the TPA/WIO assigned to an engineer. So what are the guidelines to assign an engineer? And who does that? Does that do it by the IA firm, TPA, or WIO?
I think he threw that in when we were talking about the sheathing and the brick veneer.
Yes,
and
I think
so. Saying that the FEMA guidance is to have the TPA or WIO assign an engineer to look at those sheathing issues when there's brick veneer. But for us, the adjuster sends in an engineer request to our firm, and we forward it on to the WIO company to assign the engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, here at Bankers, Gerry has the final say-so on the engineers, but when we normally get a request, we pretty much order an engineer if, to go out and look at the homes.
With proper documentation, photographs of the issue, we'll take a look at it, and again, we have engineers that we will send out there that are flood-related engineering, and we definitely will take care of that with no problem.
Okay. I've got, what we'll do is Mike was asking for the link of the claims manual. We're going to send that out to you. Mike provided that to us as well, but we've got some websites that will also provide to all our panel, for all the attendees, for the various different things that FEMA provides. So is there anything, any other questions that we can
One thing that I wanted
answer?
to address, we had a question earlier that I think we might have misinterpreted. They said that their question was not for sewer, but for regular flooding in a home when flooding did not meet the general condition of flooding in the area. So how would you handle a home that is flooded, but the area doesn't have a general condition of flooding? What is the difference between the two? I guess what I think was the question when he asked about GCF.
That's correct.
Or GF, yeah.
Oh, no coverage.
I'll take that one. To start with, this is where communication comes in with the adjuster and the insured. You got to have an open communication there, and then you got to do investigative work. You're going to have to go to the neighbor's home, knock on doors, and ask questions. If there is no general condition of flooding, basements in the Midwest, again, we're talking a hole in the ground, they have groundwater problems. Sometimes if the ground levels of the water is too high, water will back up through the sump system, through the hole where the sump pump goes, and the sump pump can't keep up with that, and it will flood a basement. But there's no coverage for that due to the fact that there is no general and temporary condition of flooding.
So yeah, like a regular flooding, if there's not a general condition of flooding, wouldn't be covered. You would need the flooding to be in the actual general area, not just.
Well, let's say, for example, if there's a river a quarter mile away and it's way out of its banks, that is a general and temporary condition of flooding. But if you had a rainstorm in the area, nothing flooded, but they got water in their basement, that's not covered.
Okay, is there any other questions that we may present to our panelists?
All right. So looking through, I think that's those are all the questions we have at the moment. They just wanted to discuss the difference between those two.
Okay,
the general condition and the regular.
So is there any last, any things that you'd like to bring up on closing to our panelists? Anything that that you want to talk about? Anything that you need to express to new adjusters?
Hey, Danny, I would like to bring up one more thing just for the new adjusters that are coming up. If you go into a flooded area, and let's say, for example, there's a new shopping mall being built, there's a new Walmart being built, Costco, whatever is being built, or if there's a new subdivision being built, take pictures of that, because FEMA is now requiring that we subrogate. They're very big on subrogation right now, and it's something that we need to look at. Although we don't have to do the subrogation ourselves, but we need to notify FEMA. at least have the photographs to where we could give it to them and let them make the decision on what they want to do.
Excellent. I have one question for Clint, because he was off the line when Joe was saying that you have a very good Facebook page dealing for new adjusters. Is there a link to that at all, Clint?
Facebook page or the website?
Well,
there was a Facebook page mentioned earlier. I believe it was mentioned by Gerry and Joe, though, not by you, Clint.
Yeah,
no,
the
it was
Facebook
mentioned.
page is called Flood Adjuster Only.
Flood adjuster only? All right, excellent. Yeah, we'll try and locate that and make sure that we can provide a link to that through social media. So anybody following the webinar right now should be able to find that hopefully pretty soon on one of our social media posts, and that will give them some resources.
And if there's any IAs on here, I would recommend that if they're looking for adjusters, or if they have work, post it on there. It'll help them. It'll help the adjusters.
Yeah, networking. Networking helps.
Okay. Thank you so much, panel, for all your insight today. I believe everybody benefited from this. And there was a lot of great questions and a lot of great answers. So I would just personally like to thank everybody that participated today and all the attendees that showed up. We had a very good attendance. So one more thing, I'll leave this to Nicole and let her wrap it up.
All right, perfect. Again, thank you everyone, all panelists that participated. This was very informative. I definitely enjoyed it as well. And just letting you know, we are going to be following up with an email probably in a couple of days with the recording of this webinar, as well as the other resources that we mentioned as well too. Thank you so much for your time, and please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for next webinars, and as well as other information as well too. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Gerry, Joe, Danny.
Hey, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.